Going on, everyone? So two teams that are really in sort of a flux and need to figure out what are they going to do this offseason is the Boston Celtics and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota swung for the fences and gave way too much for a Rudy Gobert trade, and that kind of blew up in their face. In my opinion, they were headed in the right direction and just kind of needed to stay the course, and very likely could have been looking at a deep playoff run, and instead decided, no, the one thing we need is Rudy Gobert, which I kind of get, right? The big thing that the Minnesota lacked was rebounding and like shot blocking, and Rudy kind of provided that, right? Interior defense. But it kind of neutralized a lot of what you wanted to do. It neutralized Anthony Edwards because now he has two bigs there and he's best at just getting downhill and getting to the rim. Karl Anthony Towns is best at the 5 spot. Yes, he's a great shooter, but he's still best at around the rim, and he kind of just became, instead of a 7-foot guy, might as well have been a 6'8 guy, and it just kind of threw everything for a loop for Minnesota. So Minnesota has to figure out what is the next course of action. You're not going to get anything close for Rudy Gobert is what you gave up. So do you try to trade him for pennies on the dollar and just say, hey, we made this mistake and kind of eat the loss? Or do you look to make a move elsewhere? Now, the Boston Celtics, they once again underperformed. And they are a team that's looking like one of those great teams that are never able to get over the hump, right? And they're going to really need to retool. The way that they are currently constructed, it is clearly not working. There's a lot of questions with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Do they decide to keep this duo intact? But the problem is that they don't really seem to be that great. Like, there's moments where they just look absolutely brilliant together, and then more times than not, it just seems like they kind of are counterproductive with each other, and they don't have this definitive one option, and it's just like they kind of both are the same player in a lot of ways, and it makes Boston's offense very predictable, and Jason Tatum has kind of regressed and taken a step back. He went from like a legit 3-level scorer to just jacking up a bunch of threes and, trying to get to the basket. And Boston, what do they do with Al Horford? What do they do with some of their rotation guys? Do they look to trade Marcus Smart? They're in the same kind of boat because now for 6-7 years, Boston has basically been in the same position where they're every year a perennial contending level team that actually never really contends. They're not able to get over that hump. And these two teams could actually fix a lot of each other's problems, and it's something that's been kind of circulating, and that is a Karl Anthony Towns for Jaylen Brown trade. Now, maybe there's some other pieces that get involved. Maybe there's, some assets, some draft picks or something one way or the other, right? But it basically would boil down to Karl Anthony Towns and Jaylen Brown. Now, this isn't the worst trade ever. Jason Tatum immediately gets the best center he's ever had. He's definitely an upgrade. Think of like everything that Boston has been able to do with Al Horford and the type of offensive schemes that they've liked to run, even with Ime Udoka. They really like to, spread the floor, shoot threes. Like Karl Anthony Towns is one of the best shooting big men in the league. So you could still run a lot of the same sets, the same options that you get with Karl Anthony Towns as you do with Al Horford. You could also, if you want to, you could play him next to Robert Williams because he's played next to Rudy Gobert, and at times it has worked. At times they've been able to figure it out. So you don't have, just like how, at times they'll play Al Horford next to Robert Williams, right? Like you can still do a lot of the same things, and you get a 25 and 10 guy. Right? So you're not losing the offensive output. You're not losing, you get a different look offensively. There's just, I think, a lot of nice little changes that you could look forward to with a guy like Karl Anthony Towns for this Celtics team. And then if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you're basically going all in on Anthony Edwards, which is probably the best course of action for them to go at this point. And you're getting Anthony Edwards, another reliable two-way wing player. Rudy Gobert, he can kind of be the sole anchor to the defense. He can kind of be the sole just big man down low, and you can kind of adjust and, have Jaylen Brown play the 3 or the 2, whatever you'd like to do, however you want to approach it. Basically you're going all in on the defensive end. You're getting another quality scorer. You get a more balanced attack which I think could be really nice for Minnesota, especially if they can keep like Naz Reid. Because then you could go you could have like Naz Reid as your backup. So you got that small ball lineup. You got, Rudy Gobert. You have several wings defensively. So you're going to be better defensively. And you're still going to be able to get the offensive output. Now, with Minnesota would have a definitive 1 and 2 option. Anthony Edwards is number 1. Jaylen Brown is number 2. And I just think that would be a better fitting duo than what you get with Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, as well as what Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are getting, right? Because again, there's no clear definitive alpha, right? Where if you, like Minnesota, they have that alpha. And Boston isn't trading Jason Tatum. So Karl Anthony Towns and Jason Tatum, it's a really good offensive scoring duo, right? There are some questions about the defense of Karl Anthony Towns, but Boston's got so many great defensive guards and perimeter guys. Like, I think you would be fine. And like I said, you can always, if you have to, put Robert Williams and slot Karl Anthony Towns. You get bigger, right? So I think that this would be a solid move. And Anthony Edwards gets his buddy and Jaylen Brown, so you keep Anthony Edwards happy. Jaylen Brown, I'm sure he would welcome, new introduction to a new roster in which he gets to kind of be a more focal point, him and his buddy Anthony Edwards. Like, I don't think that this would be a bad move. Could you maybe find something better? Possibly, right? Maybe not for Karl Anthony Towns. I think Jaylen Brown is actually a pretty good compensation for Karl Anthony Towns. Because again, there's just a lot of questions with Karl Anthony Towns. Teams know Minnesota's kind of in trouble and they need to figure something out. Maybe Boston gives you another first-round pick or something like that, just to make you feel like you won. But I don't think, I think that this would be a pretty fair, even swap for everybody, right? Now you're talking Minnesota would have a team of, Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaylen Brown. You go Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert if you want, or go, Prince and Rudy Gobert. Maybe you want some more shooting, or Daniels or whatever, right? You'd have several options that you could go with. So I think that this would be a great sort of swap for Minnesota. I do. I think that would be something. You got your veteran-led point guard that's just very solid. We saw he really helped Minnesota a lot. So you get that distributing point guard that's unselfish, that can play defense. Again, you have a 5-man unit that can all defend. You have a 5-man unit that can all put the ball in the hoop. Rudy Gobert is kind of the word, but Mike Conley, I think, would do a better job of setting him up. You kind of free up that spacing so Anthony Edwards can be more effective, and kind of capitalize on everyone's strengths, as opposed to what Minnesota's doing right now, where Karl Anthony Towns, his ability to shoot the 3 ball is more icing on the cake than it is an advantage, right? His advantage is at the rim. And then again, if you're the Boston Celtics, you get the best big man that Boston has had in a long time, and you get a running mate alongside Jason Tatum. Now you have Jason Tatum as the definitive one. Karl Anthony Towns is still very young. You get a guy that could play power forward. He could play center if you want him to. He's a guy that for his career is giving you 23 points per game. So that would really help. That would be hugely beneficial. If you take away this last season, right, in 2021 and 2022, he was 53% from the field. He was 41% from 3 on 5 attempts per game, which is ridiculous. He's a great free throw shooter at 85%. And he gave you 25 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. And he only committed 3 turnovers. That's really good, right? That is really good. And that, I think, could be a hugely beneficial thing. And now, if you're Boston, again, you have more than enough defense to kind of make up for the lack of Karl Anthony Towns' defense at times, and Karl Anthony Towns' ability to get into foul trouble at times. So I think the Celtics have what they need to put around, right? Because now you have like Marcus Smart. You could go, if you want, you could go Derek White, Jason Tatum, Al Horford maybe, if you want to keep Al Horford, and Karl Anthony Towns, or go Robert Williams and Karl Anthony Towns. That is a really nice balance of shot blocking, defense, size, perimeter defense, like everything. I mean, and there you go. I mean, now you have your 2 point of attack defenders in Marcus Smart and Derek White, who are both great, and Boston loved to play them together at times. You have Jason Tatum, who's a great two-way player, great defensive player. Got him. You could have Al Horford if you want as, you know, your power forward, and we've seen his ability to defend and block shots. He's been great defensively. And then you could go with Karl Anthony Towns at the 5. Or, you know, on offense, go with Cat at the 5, and on defense, have Horford at the 5. Like, it gives them a lot of flexibility. I don't hate this. Again, can you get something else? Like, but even then, like, what else could Boston get for Jaylen Brown, right? Like, Karl Anthony Towns is still only 27 years old, right? Like, could you maybe go get, like, a Damian Lillard? Sure. But how many years left does Damian Lillard have? Like, that's a real question. Karl Anthony Towns has at least, bare minimum, another 5-6 years of high-level production. Change of scenery might really help a lot. I don't know. I don't think it's the worst thing that could happen. I think it's actually a pretty solid move. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Love the trade? Hate the trade? You know, how do you feel about it? However you feel, love to hear it. Let me know.